Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Jordan here, as you know by now. So today we're going to have 10 questions from our audience members. And these questions are going to be financial related and my opinion on these thoughts and questions. So we'll go straight to the audience. We've got Amara. Amara asks, how do you think the current global economy is affecting everyday people, not just markets and corporations? Well, look, I've got a lot to say about that. So has everyone. And let's start off with the UK. We all know in the UK, compared to the UAE at the moment, that people are suffering. Everyone is suffering. Why? The level of taxation is wartime, post-wartime era high, yeah? It's shocking, and you can't tax your way out of the current mess that both the Conservative Party of 14 years prior and prior to that and during that, in conjunction with the Liberal Democrats, left us, and with what New Labour have continued to do since they took power, and I think has been one of the most disastrous spells of governance we've ever seen. So the question would be my thoughts, and let me just remind myself of that question exactly. How do you think the current global economy is affecting everyday people, not just markets and corporations? I think people are depressed. I think people have little hope for change. I think people see, if you look at this as a plant, for instance, say you've got a plant in your greenhouse or your garden, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, and you have a little plant. In the soil, it needs a bit of water to grow, to continue to grow. What we're seeing in the UK economy is no water. It is, if anything, extraction of water. So the roots are not being fed the correct nutrients and have not the right level of moisture. And I'm actually quite proud of this analogy because this has come out of nowhere. You know I like an analogy. There's a few of you that do and are aware of me full time on how I compare everything to this to that. But I'm actually quite proud of that. Why? Because I think you can get it. You get it. Everyone knows the basic levels of homeostasis and how a leaf and plant life works, and what the conditions are for that, you know, with carbon dioxide, oxygen, etc. And of course, water being life. Water is going to be another thing we come on to. I think that's going to be the next big power play as we move forward in the future, not just about gold, silver and precious metal commodities. But for me, that is simply and definitely going to be one that we're going to need to cover. So when it comes to what the analogy I make, you have a plant that's being starved, and pretty much a population of plants, if we want to refer to human life as a plant or plants, being given a lack of supply, a lack of help, a lack of guidance, a lack of sunlight, a lack of water, a lack of nutrients, whereby they're not growing. The economy's flatlining, and if anything, it's dying. And this money is going, whether it be on high taxes to, do things abroad that we may or may not agree or disagree with, but that's something I'm not getting involved in. The government have a mandate to govern, and they're there to do what they do. They're clever people. Whether we agree or not, we have to abide by those rules, and until there is a new mandate or an update of the existing mandate, we have to play by those rules or find ourselves locked away. So I'm in no way advocating anything. So when it comes to Dubai and the UAE economy, which I've got 3 months experience of, the government has not only shown an incredible degree of support, but you can feel it, the energy on the ground. I'm not going to say that at some point in the future there isn't going to be taxes introduced, because of the entire economy that is in place, there is going to be a need with the growing population and a red hot, overheated housing market, etc. At some point, there will probably need to be a degree of baseline of money to stop the governmental accounts collapsing. Anyway, that's my response to question 1. Question 2, Daniel asks, in your view, what's the biggest structural problem in today's economy that's holding back widespread prosperity? Ooh. What's the biggest problem today that's holding back widespread prosperity? UK, I want to stick on the UK because that's where the bulk of my following is. I mean, it's 50-50, but majority is within the UK, and they're the ones that are suffering. The UAE's got enough help. We're being helped enough in Dubai. We're on steroids over there, quite, not literally, but quite, yeah. So within the UK, what's holding back prosperity? Dishonesty, outright lies, inflation, which is way worse than what they're reporting. If you look at the price of something a long time ago compared to now, it's scary. It's like almost like monopoly money when you're able to get to. Everyone says the same thing. Whether it's from my past times of spending lots of time in a pub or now in coffee shops, I heard a lot and discussed a lot, as you do over a drink with fellow citizens in your community. And the same concerns are always there. I don't need to point out the obvious, which is people feel that there's zero control when it comes to population, the way the population is being managed, the departments within under central government, which is the NHS, for instance, run by the state. The budget for that is something like 400 billion annually. I mean, the US defence budget is $1 trillion. I think that's way more better spent than what we have going into the US. And all I see is locum doctors being paid, emergency call-out doctors being paid £2,000 an hour, people doing TikTok dances. Look, some would say you're doing a generalisation. The NHS was great to me back in 2011-12 when I broke my ankle and dislocated it as well. It was nasty, as you can see in my facial expressions. It hurt bad. But the money and the treatment was it good? No, there was a 3-hour wait. There was a 3-hour wait at A&E with a dislocated ankle. I almost lost my foot in East London. Yeah, I was in the City of London, taken to an East London hospital. It was a disgrace then, and it's a disgrace now. There is no defence that can be put forward. I'm spitting because I'm that angry. Yeah, there is no defence that can be put forward in terms of how the current system is being run. And just to recap on that, as I'm getting really het up here, what's the biggest structural problem? It needs real leadership. Yeah, the whole structure is smashed to pieces, in my opinion. And I know I said in a prior question that we have to respect the mandate that the current government and regime has. Yes, we do, and yes, we have to. Or we move, like I did. Yeah, and there are costs to that emotionally as well, when you've got kids and that involved. But anyway, let's move on. Question 3. Sophia asks, do you believe economic growth alone leads to a better world, or do we need to redefine what growth means? Well, look, it can't be about chasing GDP. UAE don't need. They do, but they act as if they don't. They're building something, doing everything but watching the charts. The charts and the graphs and the success comes from what they're doing, which is helping people to prosper by not taxing them to the high heavens and providing currently a quality of life that is a million times above what I've seen anywhere. Why can't this be replicated in other areas? Probably because we're way too down the track, way too down the beaten track with debt, with inflation, and frankly an economy that is rotten to the core. Yeah, the level of printing and devaluing of the current nation-state currency, whether it be Britain, the US, whatever. The US paying $1 trillion a year interest, the same as their military budget. We've got just 100% of GDP. It's like taking out, final point on this, it's like taking out a balance transfer credit card and then you pay off all your debt and you're left with nothing. It's called bankruptcy. Question 4, Jamal. Hi Jamal. You ask, what role do governments play versus individuals in creating a more fair and prosperous economy? Well, individuals, all I see is a hard-working British man and woman going to work, plumbing, electricians, doctors, white office workers, blue-collar workers. My dad's a mechanic himself, 40 years working his off. My mum, white-collar, medical secretary, NHS. I've just got a good spread on both sides as to what that means and how that actually works. And in my opinion, it's a bit of a big word to say this. Slaves to the system? Yeah, is the system working for them? No, not really. There's a safety net in terms of the NHS. Is the NHS working now? It doesn't feel like it. You know, I think we need to go back to the old days of the, I hate to say that because it pisses some people off, but a ticketing system. You turn up, and there needs to be a threshold. If you are turning up and taking the Michael and you have a symptom or an issue that could be dealt with by GP at GP level, and you are known to have breached and tried to fast track yourself, there's a certain cost applied to that. And if the GPs are wrongly sending people, and not, which I can see all the time, oh, here's some paracetamol and go to A&E, and then A&E send them back, which people and doctors will back this. I know it's true. I've tried it myself, right? It's a big merry-go-round. No one's taking responsibility. There is zero accountability. And to be honest, sometimes it can be quite funny working in those sort of environments because everyone gets paid and nothing gets done, and everyone's taking the cream off the cake. And I've seen it in certain workplaces. So, you know, we're going back to the question, no, it's about the government that are elected on a mandate to lead and to do their best for the population as a whole. Audience, I will say to you that it was going to be 10 questions at the start here. There's only 5. But that's all the more reason for episode 3 and hopefully for you to look forward next time. Liam asked, number 5, how can innovation and technology be used to reduce inequality rather than widen it? Well, very simple. If we take blockchain, there are millions of people at the moment within Africa and third world countries, which shouldn't be third world, frankly, because of what they sit on, that do not have access to a basic bank account. Therefore, they're unemployable. Okay? That's a big problem. Blockchain, anyone can have access to a self-custodial wallet, okay? This was talked about at events that I've attended in London back in 2022. Are we any further? I'm not actually quite sure. This is off the top of my head, and these questions have been thrown at me randomly. But this is the one way I would 100% reduce inequality for several billion people just like that, by giving them access to a means and a form of banking service whereby they can receive and send money and spend money in the economy rather than being sidelined because of the major banks that are, you know, fractional banking and rinsing everyone when that's another subject for another day. Thanks for listening.